Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Necessary Roughness on the Bite Size Sports Network. I'm your host, John Boyd. We've got Nick Winograd joining me tonight. Nick, how you doing?
What's up? What's up? Ready to talk some draft. What a fun couple of days it was.
Yeah, man, it was nice to get it out of the way because now
Mhm.
we're done prognosticating about who goes where. We can kind of start to review some of these fits and stuff that we talked about for months leading up to it. Um, and I personally have had a chance to talk myself off the ledge over the last few days. I'm kind of coming around on the Vikes draft. We'll talk about it a little later, but something I wanted to start with was just the quarterbacks, um, because I mean we saw a ton of mocks and a ton of
Mhm.
different iterations of mock drafts leading up to the draft itself with these quarterbacks going all over the place to different teams. The odds started to shift up and down towards the end. There we had Levis with some you know
Drama.
late cycle number one, number two buzz.
Mhm.
He ends up falling all the way out of the first to our good buddy James and the Titans. So we'll actually have him on to talk about that situation and the rest of the Titans draft. Uh, Probably about 10, 15 minutes here.
Mhm.
Um, but let's start right at the top. It was always Bryce. There was all kinds of smoke from Stroud to Levis to Richardson at one.
Mhm.
Um, but for the obviously right away after the season comes away with the Heisman, we've got all the size concerns and everything that kind of comes with that. There was a lot of buzz for Stroud late in the process. Frank Reich tends to like those bigger body quarterbacks, but granted, that's just kind of what he's had at his disposal. Um, so the extent to which he had a hand in acquiring those guys, we don't necessarily know. Um, but he's got the new job in Carolina, plants his flag with Bryce Young, um, and I think he made the right pick. I would have said the same thing if he picked C.J. Stroud. But I think just the dynamism that Bryce brings to that team, his maneuverability in the pocket. Um, I like to pick. I think those guys were both can't miss. Um, but especially in today's NFL, a guy like Bryce with his tools, size aside, might have the highest ceiling. How'd you feel
Mhm.
about the Bryce Young pick at one to Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, it was the right pick, right? Because if he's going to be, everybody's number one, there's a reason for it.
Mhm.
Bryce played at Alabama in a time where Alabama was not stacked. Usually they're stacked, and it's like Mac Jones. Of course, you can find guys over the middle. It's Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. Like, wow, incredible.
That's
But
right.
um, but Bryce Young was finding guys that were not, at that level, at the wide receiver position. So
Mhm.
obviously the size an issue. Obviously he was. I mean, I saw that he was interviewed a couple days before or day before, and he said, "Listen, I can't grow anymore. Like it's not my fault that I'm at this size. I'm amazing. I'm like, like I don't know what to do. I did all I could at Alabama. I won the Heisman. You draft me number one overall. I can't be 6'5". Sorry, you don't always have to be like a Josh Allen or a Justin Herbert at these like crazy heights.
Yeah.
There are also normal people out there that are 5'11". So
Mhm.
Bryce Young, he's just an incredible. He's an eradicator. He's an incredible player when he's out there, and he makes plays. He doesn't give up on plays. He's able to find guys and really, he throws guys open. You always got that terminology in football of can you be a guy that can find people open? Sure, but can you be somebody who you can throw guys open? Meaning, he's open because you threw it in the exact same in the right spot. So Bryce has that ability. I see a little Drew Brees in him for sure, with a little bit more of a running ability. I'm
Mhm.
pretty excited to see how he turns out in Carolina. They've been waiting for a quarterback for a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Bryce. I mean, cerebral player. Oh, my
Mhm.
screen froze, huh? Cerebral player, but just his improvisational ability is, I think, the big draw to him. Um, see if this works for me. Oh, the screen's black now. All right. Well, here, let's have you just talk real quick about Stroud to the Texans. You can get us started off with that conversation. I'm gonna jump out and jump back in and see if this resets.
Yeah, so basically, yes, Stroud going number 2. There's a lot of people that said, potentially he would go and drop to like 8 or 9. And as I said, like on the draft, preview, I said I don't think so because there's so many times that this thing happens. We saw with Goff and Wentz. We saw with so many other guys where it goes 1, 2. Which one is it? And I just had a feeling that it was going to be Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. A lot of people like Anthony Richardson, who I love. He's going to be really good for Indy. But CJ, he's just such a good player. I think that in my mock draft when we did it, I did want CJ as the number 1 pick. It was a couple weeks back. Just looking at his film, I think Houston gets a really, really good quarterback and a really good player. He's a good kid overall, coming from OSU. And now with the first-time head coach, coming from San Fran, more of a defensive guy. I think you need to get a quarterback that can, that can really help that defensive type of coach. It reminds me of, I'm a Bills fan, so it reminds me of when Sean McDermott was first brought in. Obviously we didn't have Josh until the next year, but getting a guy like that can really help, the defensive head coach work on his defense and work on what he's, elite at. And then you got a really high draft pick quarterback in the draft. So CJ Stroud, I really like the pick overall. He was mocked to Houston all along. So I was excited to see that CJ was drafted number 2, especially because I was able to guess that correctly. And then of course we had Houston trading up to get Will Anderson, which was incredible. I really thought that Arizona was going to keep that pick because Arizona's just a team that needs somebody. They need somebody that can fill that gap, and getting Will Anderson was really, really important for them as well. Sorry, John, I was rambling.
Oh, you're good. Forgive me for the technical difficulties there.
Yeah.
I'm sure you covered a lot of the points on Houston, but that trade up,
Yeah.
that was like, we said it on the stream, that was like something out of Madden,
Yeah, but I was just talking about like how it's
23.
so important. I was talking about how it's so important for like a defensive head coach to come in and get a franchise quarterback potentially. And I said it was like Josh
Mhm.
Allen with Sean McDermott because McDermott's a defensive guy. It's so nice to have somebody like that so you can work on your craft and what you have going on the defensive side while this guy is doing his thing, and you don't really have to worry about the offense too much. So I think it was a really good
Oh, yeah.
and important thing that they went with CJ.
Yeah, there was a lot of smoke about them just taking Will Anderson at 2, and
Yeah.
it wasn't that far off because they weren't going to let him go any further. They weren't going to let him go anywhere else. They used that pick at 12. Arizona got a haul. So, a good move by them. But yeah, on top of getting your franchise quarterback, you get a potential franchise changing edge rusher in Will Anderson, who I think D'Amico is going to have a field day with,
Mm.
moving him around. I'm really excited to see, how that fit plays out. And that one was sort of written. And then this is another one that, this is where the debate all offseason was Levis or Richardson. That's what felt like the most tangible set of possibilities. And they go with Anthony Richardson. I think that's the right decision. I think that's the better prospect. But there's something to be said about his low level of experience to this point. Only started 13 games. They were SEC ball games. But you see all the tools on display, and I think what really kind of separated him during the draft process were his interviews with teams. I think teams and front offices really liked just talking to Anthony Richardson. From what I've gathered, I've seen a couple clips of interviews. I saw the what the hell is that guy's name? The segment on ESPN, Draw My Play with
I think I know what you're talking about, but I also
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
know who it was.
Oh,
Yeah.
guy's name's on the tip of my tongue. Older guy.
Mhm.
Um, Mike Martz? Not Mike Martz. Anyway, but I mean, he basically saw it on the whiteboard one time, memorized it, drew it, erased it, and then he redrew it, kind of explained all the keys on it, and
Yeah.
the reads, and it was just a very, very, because there's so many things the teams see that we don't, that you can't see on film, that you can't see from a RAS score,
Absolutely.
that I think really started to separate him, and that's another case where you see a brand new offensive coordinator coming over, or a offensive minded guy coming over to take the reins, and he gets his franchise quarterback to kind of start this rebuild with. And I say
Mhm.
rebuild because they're picking at 4, but in all reality, this is a team that a lot of people picked to win the division last year. That missed the playoffs by a Week 18 game the year prior. Um, and the bones of this roster are still pretty good. So this might be the best situation for any of these rookie quarterbacks to be drafted into. Um, at least the ones who have some expectation to start year one or early anyway. I know Minshew's there in Indianapolis, but if there's any inkling of AR-15 being ready to rock and roll, I think Gardner takes a backseat pretty quick. So I
Yeah.
really like the situation for him, frankly, especially compared to the other guys.
I think he can learn
Uh,
a lot from him. I think he can learn a lot from Gardner. Gardner's not, a star, but he's definitely a winner. He's won
yeah.
at every level that he's been at. So sure,
Hmm.
he's not a superstar type quarterback, and he never will be. But there's something to be said for guys that can teach rookies, a little bit something about what they've been able to do. And while Anthony Richardson is a lot different of a style of a quarterback than Gardner, that doesn't mean that he can't learn a little bit from Gardner and that veteran presence. Gardner Minshew, I don't think anybody would have thought that he would have been such an important person, an important teammate at the start of his career. I think people were kind of clowning him for being, with the mustache or whatever. I think that at the end of his career, he's going to be looked at a little bit like Ryan Fitzpatrick, where in the aspect of he really helped a lot of quarterbacks grow, and if Anthony Richardson becomes a star, I think a lot of people are going to credit Gardner with that. So, I mean, not all of it, but a little bit. Just getting the ins and outs of the Indianapolis, culture and stuff like that. Breeding him a little bit, making sure, he feels at home, he feels safe, that he's going to be the starter, or whatever. Gardner doesn't care
Hmm.
about that. He knows that they're drafting him for a reason. Um, and Gardner Minshew he's going to be a good teammate for Anthony Richardson. I'm really excited to see him play.
Yeah, I agree. He's learned several NFL offenses already to this point, so he can kind
Yeah.
of guide him in that process. I think he'll be a great clipboard guy once Richardson gets on the field.
Right.
Um, Everybody who speaks about him loves him as a teammate. So yeah, including the backup quarterback, I think it's a really, really good situation for such a young guy
Mhm.
with such a high ceiling to come into. So Levis,
Mhm.
we've got James waiting in here. I'll pop him in.
There you go.
James, man, I know you were just itching to wax
Oh,
poetic about
oh
your QB.
boys. Oh fellas. How are we doing tonight, guys? Let's get that out. How you guys doing tonight?
What's up, James?
Pretty good, man. We're hanging in
Good.
there.
Oh boys. I want me to talk Levis, huh? God.
Yeah, we'll
Over
talk a
here.
little.
You guys gotta see my reaction live when they didn't take him.
Yeah,
Didn't get to
that
see the
was-
reaction live when they did take him when I was driving to St. Louis and my phone blew up and I was like, maybe I should just drive off the road here. Man, it's tough. It's so tough for me to judge this. Tennessee, in a vacuum, I don't hate it. Like in a vacuum, I don't hate the Titans taking Levis in the second round. I hate that they traded up and had to give up a third round pick next year. They don't have many picks next year, and they lost another one on a team that's got holes. I don't know what Tennessee's trying to do. I think that's my biggest question mark right now. They
Hmm.
take Wevless, that's about right. Take Will Levis, second round. They don't have the 50-year option on him, so he only got a 4-year contract. They take Tajay Spears the next round, so you've taken the replacements for Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, which
Mhm.
I actually, they're not going to be able to play forever. The problem being is, are you planning on playing them this year? Because Tannehill and Henry are still on contract and are the presumed starters, which is where this gets all kinds of messed up and doesn't make any sense to me, because going into the offseason, Tennessee's biggest needs were on the offensive line and receiver. They addressed offensive line. They signed a couple guys and they drafted Skoronski. I love the pick. I think it's the best pick they made in the draft by far. They didn't take a receiver until the 7th round. And I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think Tennessee has the worst receiving room in the NFL.
It's down there.
It's bad.
It's bad.
Certainly down there. Yeah.
I mean, you might
It
have
was
a couple.
good.
It was real good until last draft, and since then Tennessee's acted like it doesn't matter. Like, receiver doesn't matter in a pass happy league. Tennessee's going the complete opposite way. I don't understand it. If you're going to go full tank mode, great, but you got to do something with Tannehill and Henry.
Mhm.
And right now they're on the roster, and nobody's going to trade for Henry. You can cut Tannehill and save money, but it's a post June 1st, so it doesn't matter. Like, you can't use that money to get anybody now. So to me, it's more confusing than anything, because the setup for this team, even if Levis starts, the setup for this team isn't. They're not going to tank out. They're going to be 6-10, 7-11. The defense is too good. They got a lot of money spent on the defense. So then you're not in the top 5. You're not one of the top picks next year. You've taken a quarterback in back-to-back drafts. The whole thing's confusing to me. I don't understand what they're doing, where they're at. I'm completely befuddled by what they're doing right now.
Yeah, might be a purgatory year.
That's what my biggest worry is being like Kev's Pacers and just being in purgatory. There's nothing worse than being 6-10, 7-11. There's nothing worse than that. You can't get a top pick. You get like, once you get into that 10 to 15, like 11 to 15 range, there's no guarantees. Usually at the top, there's pretty spot on guys. After that, and you can't get the team better, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in purgatory forever. And I don't know what they're doing. I'm confused, guys. I'm really confused. Like, I've somewhat talked myself into Levis. Like, I after talking to you about it, John, I've taken it to heart. I'm like, I'm not going to just go into, like, I got to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
But even still, like, okay, so say they sit Levis, say he sits for a year, which isn't an awful idea for him. They're gonna be 6-10, 7-11. Maybe with Tannehill and Henry back there, maybe they're 500. It's not good enough to do, like, it's not bad enough to do anything. And then the problem with getting him in the second round is you don't get that 5th-year option. So are you going to sit him for 25% of his contract behind Tannehill? You're going to sit him for one of the 4 years? I don't. It's mind blowing to me. Tennessee's just insistence that receivers don't exist, that you don't need them, is just baffling to me. And I don't get it. It makes no sense. And then my biggest problem with Levis is, I think, and maybe you guys will disagree, I think the 2 hardest things for quarterbacks to change when they get to the NFL to learn is decision-making and accuracy. I think that's the 2 hardest things to improve, especially accuracy.
Yeah.
And that's where Will Levis struggles the most, is both of those.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, man. I'm confused. I'm disgruntled. I don't know what to think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And it's a difficult spot too when you've got Malik Willis on the roster. Like, that's an interesting dynamic in that quarterback room, let alone for the front office to kind of navigate. But then you've also got, so I mean, this is the last year of Tannehill's deal, unless this is a great bounce back year for Tennessee. if the defense is all the way healthy, it could be. I don't know if I'd say a dangerous team, but they could ruin some Sundays for
Yeah,
some
they're
pretty good AFC
going to
East teams.
be not going to be able to write them off if they're healthy. Like you're going to have to
Right.
play. You're not just going to walk over them. And I think that, John, is the biggest problem.
Right.
Is that right there is they're going to accidentally win games they're not supposed to, and all of a sudden you're outside the top 10 looking in. I think
Yep.
with a healthy Tannehill, healthy Henry, you get Harold Landry back from his ACL tear on defense, the team's probably better than they were this year, and they had the 11th pick this year. And that's not good enough, especially if Levis ain't in. I think one of the underlying things here is Vrabel has now attached himself to Levis, for better or worse. Like Tannehill was the guy they traded for.
33 overall. It's not a first round pick, but that's a high investment.
It's a high investment in a quarterback, and I think he's now tied to him and his insistence not to draft receivers. I think suddenly, and I love Mike Vrabel, but I think he's suddenly on the clock. Like, all right, like this is who you wanted. This is it. Like, here we go. If this doesn't work out, Tennessee lives in purgatory here. It's going to be, I think it's bad news for him.
Everything before this was John Robinson's fault.
Yes. Yep. I will get everything before
now
that. Yes. Right? Correct. Yeah. Like John Robinson's long gone. He's the one that traded AJ, like the Malik Willis, whatever. It's all him. He gets it all. But now Carthon's got a say in, like, probably the final say in those picks, but Mike Vrabel's making these picks right now. Mm-hmm. And that's fine if you wanted Levis. Like the rumors were they were going to take him at 11, and that Skoronski was their highest rated offensive lineman. They didn't expect him to be there. So my freak out at 11 about them taking him was a real thing.
Yeah.
So I'm just confused, guys. I don't have an answer to it. I don't know what to say. Tennessee, I expect Tennessee to be in purgatory this year. If I'm being honest, and I hate, like, you guys have heard me talk about this, I think Ryan Tannehill gets a lot of crap, like too much. He's been the quarterback for Tennessee's best years since the Super Bowl. Like, I'm going to give him his credit where credit is. He's not perfect, but Tennessee pre-Ryan Tannehill was awful. Wouldn't make him playoffs. They were blowing draft picks, bad coaches. He took them to an AFC championship game, him and Derrick Henry. And, one number 11 who's now in green right now. But like, I think they should, if you're going to do this, go all in on the rebuild. I hate it. Like, I love Tannehill, but cut him, trade him, whatever you got to do. Start Levis. I don't think you can do anything with Henry because I think the city of Nashville will revolt if Henry's not on that team next year. If you would cut him or trade him, like, I don't think you can do it. But it's just the whole thing's eye-opening and moving on from John Robinson because you want better, like you expect more, and then to do that, like, I understand planning for the future, but it almost looks like me they're just planning for purgatory again.
Yeah, and I could see moving on from Tannehill. We might see closer to camp some QB needy teams that feel like that. He could maybe elevate them just enough. Last year, his deal, he does have some dead money attached to him. I want to say like $10 million.
He's got a
year dead.
It's not great. He's got a nasty contract because when they traded for Julio Jones, they restructured it and it got backloaded. So Tannehill gets a lot of crap. He's got the highest cap hit of. I don't know if he's the highest cap hit of quarterbacks this year, but he's in the top like 3. Yeah, and he gets a lot of flack for that, but that's actually John Robinson's fault because when they traded for Julio, they had to restructure his contract and it got backloaded. And it is what he's got, like a $28 million hit this year. It's astronomical. So Tennessee can cut him post 1 and get half of it, like $16 million back, but it doesn't do them any good. They aren't, they're not getting anybody. There's going to be no magical receiver on the market. The press conference Saturday night, or was it Friday night after they took Levis, was pretty heated at their complex in Tennessee. They were just straight up asked them like why they're insistent on not drafting receivers. Carthon said, and I quote, it was like, "You roll the dice, play the board." I'm like, oof, that's a bad quote. Like, that's really bad.
And there were receivers there.
Yes.
They
would have been there.
And then some guys really fell. I mean, you can get maybe they're in love with Tyjae Spears, but the Vikings took Dwayne McBride in the 7th round,
Yeah,
and
Tennessee just
he was one of the most productive backs in football at UAB over the last 2 seasons. And there were good fallers at running back. And you look at all the 3rd round receivers that went off the board: Josh Downs,
Yep.
Mingo, A.T. I think I texted you at one point. A.T. Perry's still
Yeah.
on the board. Don't worry, James. A.T. Perry's
And they just, when they took Tajay Spears, I think every Titans, it was just collective, just jaw hit the floor.
It's
Listen,
a wild
I like the Tajay. Listen, again, in a vacuum, I like Tajay Spears. I really do in a vacuum.
Yep.
Titans need a 3rd down back. Derrick Henry's getting older. I like it. However, when they still hadn't taken a receiver, Tajay Spears to me seemed like a luxury pick. He also, did you see his medical concerns? Have you seen what's going on?
No
stuff
ACL.
On his knee? No ACL. As somebody that is 9 months post ACL surgery, I don't know how that's possible. But they were talking about no ACL and like arthritis developing in it already. And I'm just like, that's wild to spend a top 100 pick on. I mean, I'm just, again, there's all that runner receivers when it was Jonathan Mingo, it was Downs, it was all those guys were floating around there. And Tennessee said they didn't want any of them, I guess. So biggest winner of the weekend was Nick Westbrook-Akina, because now we have to throw to him again. And I'm just like,
fantasy stock up for Nick Westbrook-Akina.
Yeah, Tennessee must really believe Treylon Burks is going to make a mega jump this year, and Chig's going to make a mega jump, and Kyle Phillips isn't going to be hurt all year. And none of it makes sense. I think they're going to hand the ball 200 times again to Henry this year and just end his career.
Yeah. And I mean, you might want to get Levis into the mix with a security blanket like Henry to hand off.
Yeah,
kind of ease his.
I agree with that. Let him do the play action stuff,
Right.
I mean, that's what, and I hate it for Henry because I hate just wasting his final years. He's not as good as he was 2 years ago. He's lost that high end speed. However, he still had 1,500 yards rushing behind a trash offensive line last year. He is who he is. Like, I just hate wasting his last year, but that's all Tennessee's done here. And it started when they traded A.J. Brown, and it's just spiraled since then.
Yep. So we have, a pretty underwhelming outlook in Tennessee immediately following the draft. There's a lot of offseason left, but there's not a lot of talent left out there.
I will, before bouncing off here, I'll leave you guys with one question, okay? Now that Will Levis is on my team, it is what it is, okay? The question I have for you guys is, do I have to eat bananas with the banana peels on, and do I have to put mayo in my coffee?
No.
I say yes to the peels. Yes to the peels.
No.
The mayo coffee may have been a spoof. I'd start eating the peels though. They look like they work for him.
Hey, I'm like,
hasn't even done anything yet. Not until he does something for your team.
If he does, I have to wait till he does something. Then I have to go to Nissan and bring a banana with me and eat it in the stands and put it on our website.
If he's a star, you'll see that all over like the crowds in the stadium at home.
100%. You're gonna see.
He hasn't done anything, so no.
Yeah, you're gonna see fans in the stands eating full bananas, and it's gonna be the most disgusting thing ever.
Well, you won't, because he's not gonna do anything. But yeah.
I don't think so either. I don't think he's gonna do anything either. We may end up drafting a quarterback for the 4th straight year next year.
Well, just get 1 or 2 banana peels under your belt before the season hits, and if he winds up starting, you'll be the first one to it.
Get a test run out of the way.
Yeah.
I just popped into James to say, try that mayonnaise at home. All right, if you're gonna put mayonnaise in your coffee, try it at home first.
I'm gonna send you the video, Kev, to post for us. So appreciate you guys having me on. Sad Titans fan here, boys.
Appreciate you, James. Have a good one, brother.
We'll see you guys.
All right, we will tag James out for Kev, our resident Colts fan, and we'll jump back to a little bit of AR-15. We'll have Kev give us the skinny, how the fan base is feeling. Kev, let us just know what the initial vibes are in Indy around AR-15. What do you feel like separated him from Levis there, and the reason they felt comfortable sticking at 4? And it seems like they got their guy. Let us know in the comments as well what you think of Levis. how you feel about AR-15 to the Colts. We'll be talking the rest of the draft shortly here. But Kev, let us know the skitty.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I broke protocol, but when I heard that James was tagging out, I just knew that I had to jump in and get a little Will Levis commentary in there because,
go.
as I mentioned on Twitter, some of us Colts fans have felt a certain way. We've been getting dogged about your future quarterback is Will Levis, and it had come from a certain division rival throughout the last couple of months. So it did feel kind of fitting, my how the turntables situation here with now that they got their guy. So now I will say, to take it back to AR-15, take it back to the guy that we did get, with the exception of a few, and those few have been very loud about their unhappiness with the decision. I have seen, honestly, an outpouring of support that I didn't quite expect from the Colts fans. This went from a week or two ago, we were all in agreement that this was a project, no matter what, whether you went Levis or Richardson. A lot of people were saying it's all upside, it's all potential. Cut to yesterday, and he's a week 1 starter. And I can understand, in theory, maybe playing the long game to just go ahead and get him as many reps as possible. But, genuinely, it feels like people have really bought into the hype. At least Colts fans have. They are really bought into what Shane Steichen could do for this guy. I'm more of an opinion that I think we're not going to know much until year 2 for him. I think year 1 is going to be a lot of what did you see there, man? Like what did you think you saw? What were you doing? Why did you do it that way? I also happen to have I'm a Colts fan who can remember Peyton Manning's rookie year and those 24 interceptions or something like that. It was a record.
27?
Yes, it wasn't good.
No, it was a lot.
So I don't know. I hope Colts fans can have some reasonable expectations for Richardson this first year, but I would say, the water's warm in Indianapolis right now. People are very happy about this future, and it may be more so about all the other picks that Chris Ballard made. That may be a reason why some folks are pretty high on this, but a lot of folks are excited about AR. I am cautiously pessimistic, as I always am. And see, Herbert would know.
Herbert would know. This guy knows. So yeah, we talked about right before you hopped in, Nick and I, how great of a fit we feel like, especially juxtaposed to where the other top quarterbacks landed. You think about the bones of this roster. A lot of people predicted them to win the division last year. Injuries got a little crazy. Matt Ryan fell off a cliff. Some things you couldn't possibly predict. But the year prior, even, they were a Week 18 game, a very sad Week 18 game away from cracking the playoffs. And a lot of that roster is still intact. The high-end talent has been good for a few years. The core has been good for a few years, but it's been a fragile group because the depth hasn't really been there. And something that I think they addressed masterfully with the rest of this draft. We're going to talk about some of our favorite draft classes for the final segment of the show, but this is one of mine. It's up there. I loved Pittsburgh. I loved Philly, but especially some of these late round selections, I was huge on. Nick, anyone in particular that jumps out at you in this draft haul for Indy? In my opinion, there's a few steals. We got you muted.
I'm muted.
Oh,
yeah, our boy Northwestern's AA. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, come on. Round 4.
Yeah.
Shocked
when they got him. I was actually just devastated. So
yeah, that was a tough. Not a super refined player,
no,
but just another guy on that unit. It's a gap penetrating Gus Bradley scheme. He's going to be able to play inside and out. I think that's such a nice fit. I could still see Yannick Ngakoue coming back potentially. He's still out there. He doesn't tend to venture too far from Gus Bradley, but I like that fit a lot for them. Obviously, a freak athlete. And you put him alongside a Grover Stewart, a DeForest Buckner. All of a sudden, you have a lot of tools on that defensive front. I like Diode Ingbo. I like the kid from I can't remember his name, but I like a few pieces on that defensive line already. I think this is another addition to it. Julius Brents feels
That was a
like,
great pick.
and Darius Rush for that matter.
Yeah.
Both feel like very, very Colts corners. Going to be great with Gus Bradley. Doesn't run the cover 3 as religiously as he used to, but still has a ton of it. And specifically Brents, I think, is going to be an awesome deep third boundary corner with the physical tools he brings to the table. Blake Freeland, another athletic freak, highest vertical of any offensive lineman to test. I think it might have been an offensive lineman record at the combine. Awesome athlete. You got to wonder if they try him right away at left. But out in space, he's excellent. Josh Downs had some early second round hype, late first round hype. I grabbed him in our dynasty league, Kev, so watch out for that. And I even like Jalen Jones late. I think he could crack the roster. It's not a ton of bodies in that cornerback room right now, and I could really see all three of these guys cracking the roster and sniffing some playing time.
I agree.
Any
Yeah.
other standouts for you on there, Kev? I overall, I think this was a comfortable B+, A- type of draft.
Yeah, I felt great. I think for me, what was it? I think it might have been it was the Brent's pick is the one, not necessarily just because I love that value at 13, but because Ballard traded back twice to do that. So he moved back 9 spots, added 2 more picks to this. So I think it was maybe it was a 5th and a 7th, I think. So, 2 of those picks right there were, and so you jump back 9 spots, you still get your guy that fits your system. So those little moves right there. But for me, it's everything really that 3 through 5 range. That was a sweet spot. I really thought that the Colts did a great job. Josh Downs, very excited about. Yeah, AA. He was showing up as best available for certain guys in the second round for certain teams that I was seeing him pop up on these as this could be a good fit here. This could be a good fit here. So I think there's some big talent there. The one place where I'm going to have to look at some more tape. I don't know what you guys can tell me about Will Mallory out of Miami, but that's been a bit of an enigma position for the Colts. Of course, we have Jelani Woods, who I'm hoping to really step up, but they have bodies there, but they haven't quite found it out. So I'll be interested to see what Mallory brings.
Yeah, I haven't watched him personally. What I've heard, he was like a 10 to 15 tight end in this class. Obviously, a huge tight end class. Lot of tight ends went in day 2.
He's also a huge guy. Jesus Christ.
Giant guy, yeah.
He's 6'5", 245.
Yeah, big kid.
Perfect to pair up with Jelani. Well, yeah, now they got some size because then they have Granson's an undersized tight end and
Granson and 4.54. This kid ran at the 40, fastest of any tight end.
Wow.
Seam stretchers. So yeah,
he's Josh Young is a tight end.
That's what we've got on him. Yeah. Yeah, man. So yeah, I'm loving that draft. That's probably in my top 5. I was kind of combing through a lot of these in preparation for the show. While I've got you, Kev, let's talk a little bit of Chargers here quick as we sort of transition. Because we've got a couple comments here. Max Duggan, to back up Herbert, that he's a gamer. Yep. He's a gamer. Obviously not going to push him for any snaps necessarily, but if, God forbid, Justin Herbert were to go down, I think that's, an interesting pickup, especially a flyer in the 7th. And he also mentions in the comments here that he likes Tuli Tuipulotu. He likes Dion Henley. We talked about Henley on this program last week. We all are big Henley guys. I think he'll be an awesome fit in Staley's defense in particular. The amount of space that those linebackers need to cover in a defense like that, he's that guy. He's a seam eraser. He's a dig eraser. The way he's able to sink and turn his hips with routes over the middle is Drew Fred Warner comps. I don't know if the ceiling's that high, but he's of that ilk. And a guy to sit behind for a guy like Dion Henley, Eric Kendricks. There's not a better locker room guy in the league, in my opinion. Upgrade from Tranquil. Yeah, they didn't pick up Kenneth Murray's 5th-year option. So there's wide open opportunity for Henley to get some snaps early. And, even if he's not getting first team snaps, I think you look at the depth now at that position for 2023, at least with those 4 guys. I think you're feeling pretty good about that situation at the second level over in LA. And Tuli is a really interesting pass rusher. Played some D tackle at USC before dropping about 25 pounds, and then played at 266, played a little more true edge. This past season, he's going to be able to move all over the place. Might be a 3-4 D end in base. Obviously, Bosa and Mack are still there. But he could be a really nice chess piece for Staley as well. This was a good draft. The Quentin Johnston, so they double up on the TCU wide receivers.
I missed that, yeah.
Which is interesting. And then they go get Max Duggan, just in case they've got some chemistry on the second team.
Yeah, they are prepping to have a strong practice squad. They're like, listen, you guys are going to be on the same page out here.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a fun thing there, I guess. Scott Matlock is an excellent run defender as well. Real gap eater. He'll play early downs. I think he makes the team. That's another need they had, frankly. So, Matlock from Boise State. So that's a pretty good draft as well. Kev, feel free to stick with us if you'd like, but I think we're going to transition here to some of our favorite draft classes. And part of that transition we're going to use is Hooker to Detroit, which caught me a little off guard. But I think when you look at this class collectively, and if you squint and you don't look at the pick with which they selected these particular prospects, this looks like a really good draft. Like if you just kind of shift everybody around, you move like Jahmyr Gibbs to 2-3, Laporta to 214, and Branch up to 12, all of a sudden you're like, oh, they knocked that out of the park. But then you see the running back at 12, and you're like, Jesus, what are they doing? I mean, watching day one, we were all sitting there. What the hell is Detroit doing? But not navigating this board according to consensus by any stretch. And I think they could have gotten their guys at different spots. But retrospectively, that was thinking they're passing up on guys like Brian Branch, who they still get at 45 overall. And all of a sudden, this is like the best collection of strong safety, nickel slot defender pieces in the secondary in the league. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Brian Branch, of course, Cam Sutton and Emmanuel Mosley played plenty of slot. Like, they have so many options there and so much versatility in the defensive backfield. I loved. I mean, I was obviously huge on Brian Branch leading up to the draft, but I love that fit. But Hendon Hooker in the third just seems to be a step kind of outside of their plan they were executing, which was maximize this year with Jared Goff. You spend a third round pick on a guy, which sure might have more upside than the next tier of quarterbacks. Might have fallen in their eyes, might have fallen further than they thought he would. And all of a sudden they're sitting there and they're like, oh, we think this guy's a bona fide second round player. We got to take him based on our board. And I don't know if I agree with that. You can still get a very, very helpful 2023 asset with 3-5. I mean, there were a lot of great players on the board. There's a dearth of available talent suddenly at wide receiver with the gambling incident. Move on from Quintez Cephas. Jameis Williams is going to miss the first 6 games of this season as well. I love Antoine Green out of North Carolina. He was pretty well overshadowed by Josh Downs, but he's got some great tape as well. So I think that's a steal in the 7th, but I don't know. Laporta's good. He looks like Jeremy Shockey after the catch. He's an absolute maniac.
He does.
And Jack Campbell's sweet, but I don't know. It just felt like up to this point they were just executing this offseason and the offseason prior. They were trending in the right direction. They were doing everything right. And then the Hooker pick was kind of just like, okay. Nick, what were your initial thoughts on Hooker going to Detroit? I think there were a lot of other teams that you felt like might pull the trigger on him at that spot, and Detroit was a curveball for me.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it either. He's a good player, and it's so unfortunate to see what happened at the end of his season. And he was so good, but it doesn't fit, as you said, it doesn't fit into what Detroit is doing. It just was really perplexing to me when I saw that. I was like, wow, because I really thought that a team like the Pats or the Bucks would have taken him, just because those teams are that they need somebody to kind of jolt their offense. Baker and Mac are not doing it, and I think the fans of those teams know that Baker and Mac are not doing it. So I was surprised that he didn't go to one of those teams, and then he goes to Detroit, where they've built this thing with Jared Goff a little bit. And then they give him extension. Dan Campbell is always, backing him 100%, saying he's my quarterback. He's really, as we know, Jared Goff's more of a system quarterback than anything else. But this is a good system in Detroit all of a sudden. They really started to build it. In LA, it was great with McVay. It was not great when they traded Stafford for him. And now it is. So it's like, why don't you try to trust Jared and just see if they can. This is finally the year that Detroit should be in the playoffs. This is finally it. And then they draft a quarterback, and it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just, and he's such a different style of a quarterback than Jared. So if Jared goes down with an injury, you have to kind of change the entire complexion of your offense to match this quarterback. Rookie, it's just, I don't know. I also wasn't a big fan of the Jack Campbell selection because I saw him more of a second round pick. He's a great player. I just saw him more as a second round pick. So
I'm pretty sure the next off-ball linebacker didn't go until like 30 picks later.
Yeah. So
or something like that,
It was interesting for sure. Because you see him mocked in like top 5 of the second round, and then you see him at, it's not 29th. This is 18. That's pretty high. And so I wasn't in love with that. Obviously not in love with the Gibbs pick because it's just like it was just really out of pocket. Laporta was a slam dunk. I think that he's really going to help him. But after losing TJ Hawkinson as well, so that was a good pick. But and Branch was really nice. That's so nice that he'll have that. Xavier McKinney from Bama. Like I think they're kind of similar players. But Hooker, it was just a weird pick. And I feel like if you're building a culture, you want to. There's a reason that Baltimore always has Tyler Huntley behind Lamar because they're so similar the way they play. So it's like if you lose Lamar, you're not losing much. In the style of play. But if you go from Goff to Hooker, teams are going to be like, whoa, like, I don't know. It's weird. but it's interesting.
It's weird, and it's not even Goff insurance for this year.
Yeah.
Because of the injury he's coming off of. So it really does nothing for your 2023.
Yeah.
And you had a good free agency, but again, I think you could have there's meat on the bone here for sure. If you're Detroit. So yeah, that was nuts for me. Any thoughts on Hooker at all, Kev, before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I'm just going to echo a lot of the same things that you said. I think, in particular, if Hooker had fallen, that could have been like, oh, he's still sitting here in the 5th round or something like that. Okay, maybe we'll take a flyer on him. But yeah, it doesn't fit. I mean, that whole draft was just a roller coaster because you're like, what the hell are they doing? And then a second, what the hell are they doing with Campbell? And then, as you both pointed out, they hit it out of the park with both 2nd-round picks, right? And then, so then it's kind of like, oh, okay, wow. Well, you got Laporta and Branch. All right, well, we're back to level. This is starting to feel like a great draft again, or at least a good one. And then, boom, you get Hooker. And I'm just gonna reiterate, Nick, you both hit it on the head. You would like to have a backup that is either going to be able to spell your quarterback for a short period of time, or at the very least, who you don't have to tailor a completely new version of the playbook for. Like, if their skill sets aren't aligned whatsoever, and then, as you added, John, that there's on top of that there isn't really any potential insurance. We don't know exactly when Hooker's gonna be available. So I don't know. Again, if he had fallen a few more rounds, it could have been something. I see the potential here. We'll stash this pick. I'm a big NBA guy, so I root for teams that draft guys who are in Spain who can't even come to America for a year or two. So, like, I can understand some of these types of picks, but not in this situation. This round. That's my thought.
Yeah, in my opinion too. Plenty of other flyers you could have taken later in the draft while maximizing it. A 3rd-round pick for this upcoming season when it feels like a win now window for Detroit. Last little thing on them, it came out that they would have taken Gibbs at 6 over Bijan and feel like they got great value. That was their RB1 was Gibbs either way.
Wow.
Interesting.
Interesting. Interesting. What do they know that nobody else knows? We'll see.
Bijan looks like a star in the league before he was even drafted.
Right.
And what I mean by that is they were talking to him before the draft, and he was like, he's so like charismatic, and it was like, this guy looks like he's been in the league for 4 years. He's been an All-Pro twice, and it was like he hasn't been drafted yet. And it's just he's so good. I just feel like he's going to be a star.
Yeah, he's the shit. I wonder what those particular hairs they were splitting look like when they had Gibbs over Bijan. That's certainly interesting.
Yes.
So I'll kick this one off, and then Nick will go over to your favorite class. Mine's Pittsburgh. I loved this draft. Top to bottom. Not as many picks as a lot of other teams, but we talk about building the picket fence. You get Broderick Jones at pick 14. I think that's an awesome pick, probably to play opposite Dan Moore, who was serviceable. They addressed the interior offensive line in free agency some, and then you get Joey Porter Jr. in the 2nd round. And I thought that was awesome value there. You've got to love just the pick itself when you talk about Joey Porter Sr. being a Steeler.
Royalty, right? Pittsburgh royalty.
Pittsburgh royalty, man. And I also they're going to play, and this will get me into Corey Trice as well. They're going to play a lot of press man. They're going to want their corners in your face. They're going to love the 34-inch arms on Joey Porter Jr. They're going to love the frame on Corey Trice. If you don't know about Corey Trice out of Purdue, another big-bodied guy who could have went a lot higher. There may be a medical red flag that we aren't privy to, that led him to fall all the way to the 7th.
It's always a
But
little suspect.
It's always a little suspect. But they took a chance on him there, and if he's all good, if it's something that they're either able to address with the training staff or it's something that'll subside, I think that's an awesome fit if he pans out to any degree. And then you look at Keanu Benton, who has drawn Cam Hayward comparisons from some analysts I've heard. I watched a ton of Keanu Benton film when I looked at some of these Big Ten interior offensive linemen, and he was an absolute problem on a lot of reps. Versatile guy, probably projects as an NFL 3 technique. Good penetrator, pretty solid pass rusher. Is serviceable in the run game as well. Stout. I think that's a great fit along their front. They're going to keep the front 7 strong. And then Darnell Washington, who there might be another medical red flag around or something, falling all the way to the back end of the 3rd. And I like Nick Herbig as a rotational pass rusher as well. Like, I think with the assets they had, the Steelers navigated this board really well, filled a lot of needs, and I think suddenly this roster is pretty well rounded. After the offseason they had, it was a really quiet free agency, but they made some smart moves. And this draft addressed some needs and got some players in the building that I think will make a day one impact, potentially 5 or 6 guys who might see some first team snaps come September. Nick, who was your favorite draft class, favorite haul here in 2023?
So there's 2 teams that come to my mind, but I'm going to pick neither one because I don't want to be boring and say Philadelphia.
Okay.
I don't want to be biased and say Buffalo because yes, we just got Travis Kelce, and we also got my favorite player of all time, Osiris Torrance, which was probably the coolest moment in my sports career or life.
Yeah, that was sick. That was a sick call. Nick predicted that.
Preaching Osiris for the last I don't even know how long, making a Shining reference, which came out of left field. I was very excited. I was very excited for the Bills to draft him. In the 2nd round, which is just absurd. As you said with other guys, falling, maybe it's a little suspect that he went so low. But I'm not going to go with the Bills because I can talk about the Bills forever. I went with the Seattle Seahawks. I thought the Seahawks did a really, really good job. They kind of catapulted themselves into one of those top 5 NFC teams, and all of a sudden they're back. Yes, they made the playoffs last year, but you never really thought that they had a chance to beat San Fran. But now all of a sudden you have an awesome draft class, and they're back. They're back to being a top 5 NFC team, and it's just been incredible because Pete Carroll, he just has that. He has that organization, man. He doesn't let up. It's like Mike Tomlin. It's like Bill Belichick, except Belichick hasn't been doing too much. But those two, they really just keep their teams where they need to be, even without the quarterbacks they've had for years and years. It's really impressive. Seattle had an awesome draft, so I'm gonna go with Seattle. But yeah, Buffalo and Philly also had amazing drafts.
Yep, I'm with you there. I want to shout out the Rams draft. F them picks nation actually picked a shit ton of times. Here they are. Here,
look at that.
Puka Nacua is likely to fill. BYU runs a McVay-ish offense, from everything I've heard, and he projects as kind of like a Robert Woods role. Stetson's interesting. Nick Hampton out of Appalachian State is an absolute athletic freak.
Love Tomlinson in the 6th round there too, right?
Tomlinson in the 6th. Hampton deadlifts like 600 pounds. He's just a nut job. Kobe Turner's cool. Byron Young's cool. That was a pretty good haul. We're also going to shout out the Bears. Our boy Nate's Bears, who are getting there. Tyreek Stevenson, I think, was an absolute steal. he might turn out to be one of the 2 or 3 best corners in this class, frankly. He was so good in man coverage. I think he's going to fit very well alongside Jalen Johnson. And they have 4, and if you count Terrell Smith as well out of Minnesota, Sky-U-Ma, all of a sudden they've got 4 pretty passable cornerbacks who are under the age of 24 and ready to grow with this unit. Nate sent us over some thoughts. He's not able to join us live tonight, but I've got a couple of reviews from him on some of the picks he liked more than others. Darnell Wright, he was a huge fan of. Oh, here he is. Darnell Wright, Nate was a huge fan of. Didn't think he would be available later. It'll help Justin Fields progress. He was big on Tyler Scott out of Cincy, who he sees a little bit of T.Y. Hilton in. So if he sniffs that type of ceiling, I think that's an awesome receiver to add to that group. More weapons is always better, he says. I love Roschon Johnson out of Texas. Overshadowed by Bijan, but Roschon Johnson is serious. I think he'll be an excellent addition to that backfield to go with Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, I like him too.
That's a great fit. He likes Javon Dexter. Thinks he'll fit at the 3 tech. They needed a ton of help on the defensive line. And the one thing about Dexter is that he's slow off the line. Doesn't have a lot of burst, but what I've heard is that is actually how he was coached to play at Florida. For whatever reason, they didn't want him exploding off the line and penetrating. They wanted him 2-gapping, locking, peeking, shedding as much as he could. So at the NFL level, I don't think his get off is going to be a concern, especially if that's not what you're coaching him to do.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a weird thing they were doing at Florida. Zach Pickens can't stop the run to save his life, but he could apply a little bit of pressure. Might be a little high for him. But overall, I think this was another step in the right direction for the Bears. I think since Poles took over, we reprimand teams for half-assing their rebuilds a lot. They full-assed it, all the way. Got rid of Roquan, got rid of Khalil Mack, got rid of Bilal Nichols, Eddie Jackson. Your clock is ticking, and all of a sudden, it's a brand new. It's really going to be created in Poles' vision, and he really has full ownership over. This is another draft class that I think will help move things in that direction. Going OT at the top is certainly the way to go. They added weapons through trade over the last calendar year with Claypool and DJ Moore. If Darnell Mooney's healthy, that's an awesome trio. Cole Kmet and Bob Tunyon. Like, all of a sudden, that's a pretty good offense. The tackle duo, Darnell Wright's a right tackle, so you can leave Braxton Jones at left. The tackle duo looks good. Sounds like Whitehair is going to be the center. So we'll see how they navigate the rest of the interior offensive line. Tevin Jenkins probably staying at right guard. Things are looking up there. I don't think they'll push the Lions or the Vikings, and I think the Packers will still get the better of them this year. But all of a sudden, I think that's an interesting team. It's a good draft. The Packers draft was good as well. I think that's what kind of kept them, a little bit above the Bears, at least projecting out. But Nick, before we hop off, let's talk about our teams just a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me what else you liked about this Bills draft, and how it makes you feel coming into this upcoming season here. Not a ton of picks. We got 6 guys. But I think at the very least, the first 3 picks, I think were awesome.
Yeah, so Dalton Kincaid, it was very, we talked about him in the mocks, and I was like, I don't think, because we were talking about Kincaid and we were talking about Michael Mayer, right? And
Yep.
those guys, they were kind of going over my head when we were talking about them, just because I didn't think that the Bills would ever look at either one. So I was like, hey, if he goes to like a Bears or he goes to like a Vikings, cool, like a Lions, cool. But I wasn't really thinking about it for the Bills. And then when Commissioner Roger Goodell said that, I was like, whoa, I wanted Torrance. And I was like, but then I looked at it. I was like, listen, man, this guy, he's got a little Travis Kelce in him. He's got a little, what we've been missing over the middle field. Obviously the receivers they've been good, not great. And Knox is just, he's more, even at Ole Miss, he was more a run blocker and a pass blocker so when he comes to Buffalo, we're like, Dawson, we don't really have any tight ends. So if you can be that guy, he's like, okay, I'll try. He doesn't catch the ball very well. He really worked on it a lot. I'm proud of him for doing that. And, so is everybody else. But Kincaid's somebody who's a weapon on offense. It was something that we needed. Every one of these teams, Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens, it feels like they all have a tight end, right? They have somebody that Joe or Patrick or Lamar can go to, if it be, Mark Andrews or Hayden Hurst or Travis Kelce. So it's cool to see Kincaid being drafted, for sure. It'll be fun to watch him progress. And then I really liked Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams is somebody that, yes, maybe he's not from the biggest school, but he is somebody that can come in and help, the middle of the field. We lost Tremaine Edmonds we lost him to Chicago. And at the time it was like, you know what? Tremaine's been kind of up and down. He's been more up than down. But now we have Vaughn and we have Matt Milano. Who's the middle? Who's defending the middle? Dorian Williams is not a middle linebacker, but he can definitely grow into that role. And I'm really excited to see Dorian play. Justin Shorter, don't get fooled by the name. He's actually 6'4". So I'm pretty excited to see Justin Shorter as well. There's pictures of him that he looks like DK Metcalf in that one picture before he got drafted. I'm very impressed. I mean, he's a big guy. When we drafted Gabe Davis, he was also a bigger guy, so I thought it would just be a go up and get a guy. Gabe, transitioned into more of a, wide receiver too. So Justin Shorter, I'm excited to see what he can do. He's faster than you'd think at 6'4", and of course he can go up and get balls. Josh Allen just has to throw it up. Shorter should be able to bring him down. So I'm really happy with this draft. Alex Austin, Nick Broker, just kind of guys that were drafted at the end. Broker should help that the tackle room a little bit. I mean the guard room a little bit. Probably be more of a practice squad guy this season. And then Alex Austin, he's a dude. He's a body. These guys that they'll give Kyrie Elam some time to progress, and if they can challenge him, that's great.
Yeah, with your injury luck, Alex Austin might see a little bit of the field here this year.
Yeah, maybe playing in the playoffs
at cornerback. Yeah, and we'll see how Will Mallory pans out with his 4.54 speed. But for my money, Dalton Kincaid is the best vertical threat at tight end in the draft here. So, the only other team we'll have to get to is defending NFC North champion Minnesota Vikings. If your school is not a 3-letter acronym, you are not on our board. It was an interesting draft. It went USC, USC, LSU, LSU. So we might have had an area scout that was at those games frequently or something like that. But this is an interesting draft. I lost my marbles a little bit over the Addison pick, mostly for the fact that with Deonte Banks, Joey Porter, Brian Branch all on the board, who I thought could make an immediate impact day one at a more pressing position of need. That was my gripe with it. I've come around on it. It's the reality I'm living in. That we took Jordan Addison, so now I'm there. All right, best wide receiver duo in the league, book it. I've come back around. I still wanted more picks on day 2 and or a defensive back right away. I wanted Flores to go get his guy. I would have felt more at ease with that. I haven't gotten to the LSU guys yet on tape, but I've watched a ton of Mekhi Blackman. I've watched 3 games of his now. And I see it. None of these guys had a real high RAS score. But with Mekhi Blackman, like, he is not going to get beat deep. He does an excellent job putting a roof on vertical routes. He's a pretty heady player on tip passes or errant throws. He's always in the right spot. He has really good timing at the catch point, particularly in that UCLA game. I think I sent the clip to you guys as well. But he's playing a deep third to one side of the field, and he's got 2 vertical routes coming his way. The free safety is playing the opposite side of the field, where the passing strength was, and the 2 verticals go. It's a go route right up the sideline, and then there's a post that's coming from the number 2 receiver, and he's in no man's land. He's on an island out there. DTR throws the ball to the inside guy on the post just because Blackman had baited him just enough, staying over top of the number 1 receiver on that route, and he jumped it and knocked the ball away. It was a 2-on-1 with 2 receivers on a quarterback, and he made a play on it. So his timing's great. He triggers downfield when there's a throw to the flat or a screen or anything like that aggressively, and he strikes me as a Flores guy. Not huge, 5'11", 190 or so. But Jay Ward might be a little bit of a Brian Branch light. He played all over the place at LSU, safety, nickel corner, outside corner, will linebacker, blitzed the B gap on some passing downs in some cases. It's not Jacqueline Roy, it's Jaquelin Roy. So, the stock's going up on him. With the Key and Peele sketch, of course. Jaron Hall's cool. He's kind of that flyer where it's like that's the type of pick I would have preferred the Lions to make.
Yeah, I agree. I was about to say that. Yep.
5th round, has some wiggle to him. He can make the plays, maybe a little bit limited, but gives you another option. And you're not investing high capital there. And then Dwayne McBride, I actually did a video on top 10 draft fits for the Vikings offense, and I had him on that list. So that's one I'll take a little bit of credit for. I was in on that one. That's my Osiris Torrance. Is Dwayne McBride. But he's awesome. Somebody said Arian Foster, and now I can't unsee it. If you ever get a chance to watch Dwayne McBride, he's only 5'10", but he runs really upright with really good contact balance. He doesn't waste steps or movement, and just the way he bounces off tackles. Yeah, it looks like Arian Foster runs. Like, there's a lot of runs where he's like met at the 7 and carries a guy into the end zone. He finishes the hell out of runs. Yeah, that's the best comp I can come up with. Maybe a little bit of like a Latavius Murray, but short.
That's my boy.
He doesn't have that body type, but that's how he runs, like so upright. He's got a great high step to avoid ankle tackles, and I think he might bring a lot of value. So I've come to grips with it. I think there was a lot of meat left on the bone with this particular class as well. They hit the UDFAs hard. They got that Andre Carter kid out of Army as a UDFA. He had some like 2nd round buzz like a month ago before he shit the bed at the Senior Bowl. But we'll see where it takes us. Any parting thoughts, gentlemen, on this draft as a whole? Any particular teams you feel like we glossed over as we were going through this exercise?
I'll give a shout out. I don't know, you guys got to talk about them before I was there, and it's not necessarily the entire draft, but a shout out to the Las Vegas Raiders, because my dear friend and contributor at Bite Size Sports, though we don't see him very often. Sean B is a Raiders fan, so I wanted to make sure he gets repped here. And of course, Michael Mayer, for obvious reasons, I'm excited about that particular pick.
Yeah,
but yeah, any thoughts there? Aiden O'Connell's the big takeaway for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't finish that one.
Yeah. I was deeply into the defensive backs in this class. And I did really like Jacorian Bennett, and I liked Christopher Smith out of Georgia. I think those are really good value. Both of those, to get those guys on day 3 were both excellent picks for them. And then Tyree Wilson to play opposite Max Crosby. This defense, I think, will be taking a step forward. It was kind of just Max Crosby and then some guys for a lot of last year. Chandler Jones, I think, to an extent anyway, took a step back. They didn't have a lot of help on the back end. Rocky Sin that was there after the trade, he hasn't been picked back up yet. So these are a lot of building blocks, I think, for the future of that defense. Definitely a good shout out. I think I mentioned the Rams. The only other one that I found pretty interesting was Dallas, that I wanted to mention anyway. And we'll have to bring up, I don't know if you guys saw the Deuce Vaughn clip, but Deuce Vaughn's father is a scout for Dallas. Or maybe he's in player personnel one way or the other.
He's a scout.
But yeah, so he got to call his son and tell him he was getting drafted. And it's the best video. If you haven't seen it, go find it. You can turn it off once Jerry Jones starts talking. But when because then you hear from Mike
turn off when he starts talking.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, as you always should.
Just the clip with his dad talking to him. He's like he's choking up through it. He's like, "Hey, buddy, do you want to come work with me?" And it's just like one of the most heartwarming clips you'll see.
The only beef I have with that is that like these networks were making it seem like we don't know who Deuce Vaughn is. Like we know who Deuce Vaughn is. He's a beast. And people were like, "Oh, Deuce Vaughn's dad," or like it was like, "Yo, we know who he is. He's a really good running back." Like I don't know. That was the only thing I had. People were making it seem like we didn't even know who the hell the guy was.
Yeah, and you can't overblow the nepotism too much. It's a 6th round pick. Let me just pick my son. Come on.
Yeah, at least it's not the first 3 rounds. It's
yeah. But I just love Mozzie Smith and DeMarvion Overshone. I thought Mozzie was a really interesting pick because they run such light fronts in Dallas. I mean, it's also a Digazua at the defensive tackle. They'll run the odd front with DeMarcus Lawrence up there and DeMarcus Walker before he went to Chicago. So that's a true nose. Like they were sub 300 on the whole defensive front for 2 years in a row. So, interesting. I'll be interested to see how Dan Quinn uses Mozzie Smith, if he's just going to be a 1 or 2 down player. 27 seems rich for a guy you're only going to play on rushing downs. So, maybe he turns into a 3 down guy. Right? Yeah. So I like that one. But that's all I got. We won't get too negative. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit next week on the shitty draft classes. But we kept it upbeat in here, and those will be a little bit tougher to discern as well because all we can really say is, oh, this guy was a reach, or they didn't address this particular position. Outside of that, what do we know so far? Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. You can catch the rest of our programs the rest of the week. Do we have ADP tomorrow, Kev, or was it last week?
I believe it is this week.
Yeah, so ADP tomorrow, another damn fantasy podcast with Dan Portillo and Trevor Steinbacher. They do great work. If you're into any of the fantasy stuff, I'll have to start following them more closely for our Dynasty League, Kev. I'm a little bit out of that. out of that realm.
Ooh,
Personally,
oh yeah, they'll be the
but
guys that help you out.
yes, sir. And then I'm stoked for the bounce on Thursday with our boy Kev, and you just saw James talk about his Titans. Those two will be talking NBA playoffs on Thursday, and it's
Sure.
been such a sick playoffs so far. Really stoked to catch that episode, and we may even be live on playback TV for a game or two this week. We'll see how that goes. That's always a little bit, when we can, but those are always fun as well to just hang out with you guys, watch a little ball, and chat you up in the comments. So stay tuned for all of that, and then of course you can catch us right back here next Tuesday, 9/8 Central, on the next episode of Necessary Roughness. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next week.
Have a good one, boys.